Are you sure this is a good idea? The words hung in the air like a delicate thread, each syllable weighted with uncertainty. She stood there, a mix of confidence and vulnerability, dancing in her eyes, her heart racing with the potential of what lay ahead as the steam from the sound dune enveloped them. A warm, inviting mist created an intimate cocoon, blurring the boundaries of their reality. The dim lighting accentuated the soft curves of her silhouette, making her appear both alluring and dangerously close. The tension crackled between them, a palpable electricity that ignited every nerve ending. He leaned against the wooden bench, the warmth seeping into his skin, feeling the heat from both the sounder and the woman before him. I don't know. Justin, can't stop thinking about you. His confession hung in the air, heavier than the steam swirling around them. It was true from the moment she entered his life as his stepmother. A strange connection had blossomed, a connection that both excited and terrified him. Neither can I, she whispered, taking a step closer, the distance between them shrinking like the steam evaporating in the heat. Her eyes locked onto his, a deep gaze that spoke volumes of desire, longing, and uncharted territory. The air thickened with anticipation as he reached out, his fingers brushing against her arm. The gentle touch sent a shiver through her, igniting something primal and raw within her. It was a simple gesture, yet it felt monumental, like a spark igniting a wildfire. You're so beautiful, he breathed, and the compliment seemed to shatter the remaining barriers. She took a deep breath, feeling emboldened by his words, and in that moment she knew they were stepping into a world that could change everything. Without thinking, she leaned in their lips, brushing softly, at first a tentative exploration of the boundaries they were about to cross. The kiss deepened, fueled by a shared desire that had been simmering beneath the surface. His hands found their way to her waist, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them. The sound as heat intensified, but it was nothing compared to the warmth radiating from their bodies. As they melted into each other, she moaned softly into the kiss, the sound reverberating through him, igniting a fire that spread through his veins. His hands explored the curve of her back fingers, tracing her spine. As he savored the taste of her lips, they pulled away breathless foreheads, touching as they tried to process the intensity of their moment. What if someone walks in? She asked, glancing towards the door, uncertainty flickering across her features. Let them, he replied with a smirk, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I want this. I want you. A rush of exhilaration coursed through her. You have no idea what you're asking for, she teased, but her heart raced at the thought. Then show me. He urged, his voice low and inviting. With a sense of daring that surprised them both, she closed the gap once more. This time the kiss was deeper, more urgent, as they reveled in the intoxicating taste of each other. His hands slid down her sides, fingers grazing the soft fabric of her robe, pulling it aside just enough to reveal a glimpse of skin. She gasped, but the sound only fueled his desire. She mirrored his actions, her fingers exploring the contours of his chest, feeling the muscles beneath the fabric of his shirt. The heat of the sounder enveloped them, but it was nothing compared to the heat building between them. Maybe we shouldn't, she whispered against his lips, but her body betrayed her words, leaning into him, craving more. Then why can't I stop thinking about you? He murmured, his breath hitching as he captured her lips once again, deeper this time, their bodies instinctively pressing together, the rhythm of their heartbeats sinking in perfect harmony. Maybe because we were meant to, she said softly, pulling back just enough to meet his gaze, searching for any sign of doubt in his eyes. But there was none, only an intensity that matched her own. The space between them disappeared as they lost themselves in each other again. He pushed her robe off her shoulders, exposing her to the warm air, his hands exploring, her skin igniting sparks wherever they touched. Her breath quickened, and she let out a soft moan as he trailed, kisses down her neck, savoring the sweet taste of her skin. God, you're so beautiful, he whispered, pausing to meet her gaze, his eyes dark with desire. She smiled, feeling emboldened by his words, and reached up to pull him closer, their bodies melding together as they kissed hungrily. Each kiss was a promise, a silent vow to explore the depths of their newfound connection. As their kisses grew more urgent, she pushed him back gently, urging him to sit on the wooden bench. The heat of the sounder clung to them, creating an almost dream-like atmosphere as she knelt before him, her hands gliding up his thighs, feeling the heat radiating from his skin. "What are you doing?" he asked, breathless with anticipation. "Showing you how much I want you," she replied, her voice sultry and teasing, as she leaned in her lips, brushing against his thigh, igniting a fire in the pit of his stomach. He shuddered at her touch, each brush of her lips sending shockwaves through him. "This isn't just a game, is it? Is it a game? If we both want it," she counted, her eyes sparkling with mischief and desire. Their eyes locked, and in that moment the weight of their decisions settled around them. But all that mattered was the warmth of the sounder and the heat radiating between them. She leaned closer, trailing kisses higher up his thigh, savoring the intoxicating tension that hung in the air. He groaned softly, his hands tangling in her hair, urging her on. "You have no idea what you're doing to me." He gasped, the sensation of her mouth, inches away from where he craved her. The most was maddening. "I think I have an idea," she teased, pulling back slightly to meet his gaze, a playful smile dancing on her lips. He laughed, the sound low and husky, and in that moment she knew they were lost to each other. They were stepping into uncharted territory, but they were ready for the adventure. "Come here," he said, pulling her up onto the bench beside him. They sat side by side, the heat wrapping around them as he turned to face her, his hand sliding around her waist. "Do you know how long I've wanted this?" he murmured, brushing his lips against hers once more, slowly savoring the taste of her. She leaned into him, their bodies molding together as he deepened the kiss, his hands roaming her back, fingers dancing along the skin just beneath the fabric of her robe. She sighed into him, retelling in the sensation of being so close, the heat of his body mingling with hers. "Tell me you want this too," he whispered between kisses, his breath hot against her lips. "I want it," she breathed, surrendering to the wave of desire crashing over her. She felt bold, wild even, and the way he looked at her ignited a fire within. In one fluid motion, she shrugged off her robe, revealing her soft curves to him. His breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight of her desire, flooding his senses. "Wow," he whispered, his gaze intense. "You're incredible." The compliment sent a thrill through her, and she leaned in closer, their lips colliding once again. As their bodies intertwined, the kisses grew more passionate, igniting a fire that threatened to consume them both. His hands roamed her body, exploring every inch of her as they lost themselves in the rhythm of their kisses. She shivered with delight as he caressed her, the heat of the sounder, amplifying every sensation. "Tell me what you want," he murmured, pulling back just enough to meet her gaze, his eyes dark with desire. "I want you." She whispered the words, spilling from her lips before she could stop them. The confession hung in the air, a tantalizing invitation that made his heart race. "Then let's not hold back," he urged, capturing her lips again with a ferocity that took her breath away. Their bodies moved in perfect harmony, every kiss igniting new sparks of desire. They were lost in each other, exploring the depths of their connection with a passion that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. As they kissed, he wrapped his arms around her, pulling her closer, their bodies fitting together as if they were made for each other. She gasped against his mouth as his hands slid down her back, fingertips dancing along her spine, igniting a trail of fire wherever they touched. "More," she whispered breathlessly, craving the sensation of his skin against hers. He responded by deepening the kiss, their bodies molding together as the world outside faded away. In that moment, nothing else mattered except the connection. They were forging the desires they were embracing. As the sounder enveloped them in warmth, their kisses grew more heated, more urgent, each moment stretching into eternity. They explored each other with a mix of tenderness and passion, a dance of sensations that left them breathless and craving. "More," she pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes, searching for reassurance. "Are we really doing this?" He cupped her face in his hands, the warmth of his touch sending shivers down her spine. "Yes, we are. I want you. I've wanted you. For so long." The The sincerity in his voice was intoxicating, amplifying her own desire. The heat in the soundana seemed to amplify the moment, wrapping around them like a cocoon. She leaned into him, her lips brushing against his neck, trailing kisses along his jawline. Each touch ignited a fire within him, urging him to respond in kind. "Your touch drives me crazy," he murmured, tilting his head back to give her better access. She reveled in the effect she had on him, the way his body reacted to her. Every caress encouraged by his reaction. She kissed her way back up to his lips, pouring all her longing into the kiss. Their mouths moved together, a dance of passion and heat, their bodies instinctively molding against one another. In a moment of boldness, he pushed her back slightly, needing to see her completely. The dim light glimmer off her skin, making her look ethereal. "You're absolutely stunning," he whispered, his voice thick with desire, with a playful smile. She ran her fingers along his jawline, feeling the roughness of his stubble against her palm. "And you're not so bad yourself," she teased, leaning in for another kiss. As their lips met again, he pulled her closer. Feeling the warmth of her body pressed against his, she sighed into him, the sound echoing in the steamy air. The kiss deepened, turning frantic as their hands began to roam. His fingers tangled in her hair, while hers explored the defined muscles of his chest. "God, I can't get enough of you," he breathed between kisses, his hands finding their way to her waist, pulling her even closer. They broke apart for a brief moment, breathless and panting, the tension in the air crackling like electricity. She leaned her forehead against his, her heart racing as she met his gaze. "What are we doing?" "Something beautiful," he replied softly, brushing his thumb along her cheek. Her heart soared at his words, and without thinking, she leaned in for another kiss, pouring everything she felt into that moment. Their mouths moved together, a fusion of passion and urgency as they got lost in the sensations flooding over them. "Let's take this to the next level," he suggested, his voice husky with desire, breaking the kiss, only to capture her lips once more. She bit her lip, the thrill of the idea sending a rush of excitement through her. "What do you mean?" He hesitated for a moment, searching her eyes for any hint of uncertainty. "I mean, let's not hold back. I want to feel all of you." Her breath hitched at the implication, a mix of exhilaration and nervousness bubbling within her. "Are you sure this could change everything?" "Everything is already changing," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "And I want it. I want you." His sincerity ignited a spark within her, and she nodded slowly, feeling a rush of courage. "Okay, let's do this." With newfound determination, they fell back into a kiss, their lips colliding with fervor. His hands slipped beneath her, lifting her effortlessly as he pressed her back against the wooden bench, the heat from the sounder enveloping them like a warm embrace. She gasped at the sudden shift, but it was exhilarating. His body pressed against hers, their mouths moving in a dance of urgency and longing. The sensation of him against her was intoxicating, and she arched her back, feeling the heat radiate from their bodies. "Your skin is so soft," he murmured against her neck, trailing kisses along her collarbone. She shivered at his touch, her fingers gripping his shoulders tightly as he explored her body with a gentle urgency. "Please," she breathed, lost in the sensations he was igniting within her. He responded by capturing her lips again, kissing her deeply as he shifted his weight, his hands roaming her body with a mix of urgency and reverence. The world outside the sounder faded away as they focused solely on each other, their desires intertwining in a beautiful dance. As the minutes passed, the heat of the sounder became a backdrop to their passionate exploration. He lost himself in her softness every kiss, igniting a fire that burned brightly between them. Her hands traveled down, his back fingers dancing along his spine, urging him closer. "More," she whispered, her voice thick with desire as she pulled him closer, feeling every contour of his body against hers. "More is what you'll get," he promised, his breath hot against her skin. As he kissed his way down her body, his lips traveled lower, trailing soft kisses along her collarbone and down to her chest. She gasped, feeling an exhilarating mix of pleasure and anticipation. He took his time savoring every inch of her skin, exploring with a delicate reverence that made her heart race. God, I want you, he murmured, pausing to look into her eyes, seeking her permission. You have me, she replied, feeling a rush of vulnerability and excitement. With a deep breath, he leaned in their bodies, fitting together perfectly as they lost themselves in the moment. The world outside faded away, leaving only the heat of the sounder and the rhythm of their hearts, echoing in unison. Time seemed to stretch as they explored the depths of their connection, every kiss, every touch deepening their bond. The intensity of their desire surged like a tidal wave, and they rode the crest together, embracing every exhilarating moment. As the steam swirled around them, they moved in perfect harmony, their bodies entwined in a passionate embrace that felt both electric and tender. She gasped as he pressed against her, their bodies melding together, creating a beautiful tapestry of desire and longing. Let's take our time, he whispered, his breath hot against her ear, sending shivers down her spine. I want to feel everything, she replied breathlessly, her heart racing as they lost themselves in the moment. With every kiss they dove deeper into the depths of their desires, exploring the uncharted territory of their connection. She reveled in the sensations, flooding over her as he traced delicate patterns across her skin, igniting a fire within her that burned brightly. Don't stop, she urged, her voice a sultry whisper as she leaned into him, craving more of his touch. The world outside faded away as they surrendered to the heat of the moment, their bodies entwined in a passionate embrace that felt both thrilling and terrifying as they explored each other. Every caress and kiss became a promise, a silent vow to cherish this connection they had forged. The sounder enveloped them in warmth, a sanctuary where they could be themselves, free from the outside world. She pulled him closer, their bodies fitting perfectly as they kissed with a hunger that felt insatiable. The world outside faded away, leaving only the two of them in their own private paradise. Let's not think about anything else, he murmured against her lips, his hands caressing her back, fingers trailing along her spine. Just us, she replied, her voice thick with desire as they kissed again, pouring everything they felt into that moment. Time seemed to stand still as they lost themselves in each other, exploring every inch of their connection with a fervor that felt intoxicating. The steam swirled around them, wrapping them in an intimate embrace as they surrendered to their desires. As their kisses grew deeper and more urgent, they knew they were crossing a line they were both ready to embrace in the heat of the sauna. With every caress and kiss, they forged a bond that transcended the ordinary, stepping into a world of passion and longing that would forever change them. And as the minutes turned into hours, they reveled in the beauty of their connection, embracing every moment with a fervor that left them breathless. The world outside faded away, and all that mattered was the two of them entwined in a passionate embrace that felt like a dream come to life. As they pulled away for a moment, their foreheads resting against each other, she could see the raw desire in his eyes. This is everything I wanted, he whispered, his breath mingling with hers. Me too, she replied, a smile gracing her lips as she kissed him softly. Then let's make this moment last, he urged, capturing her lips again, a promise wrapped in passion and longing. The steam swirled around them, blurring the lines of reality as they surrendered to their desires. The world outside, forgotten in the heat of their connection in that sauna, surrounded by warmth and steam. They were two souls entwined in a passionate embrace, exploring the depths of their feelings with a fervor that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. And in that moment they knew they had crossed a threshold, one that would forever change the fabric of their lives. Together they embarked on a journey of discovery, unraveling the threads of their connection and weaving a tapestry of desire and love that would bind them together for all time. In the end, it didn't matter what the world thought or how it would change them. All that mattered was the fire burning between them and the promise of what was yet to